Okay, for the last true lab of the semester, we'll finish up with the reproductive system. As my wife said, this is the lab of the breasties and the testes. Okay, so go through all the parts, not necessarily in order, because I'll go through the order that I find them on the models. But we have this same list. It's got the renal parts on one side and the reproductive on the other. These are the ones I'm going to be most heavily concentrating on for the lab practical. Again, for your actual lab work, you'll want to fill out your entire lab manual and take pictures of that and send it to me. But be sure that you focus maximal attention on the parts that are on this list. So we'll start off with the male reproductive parts, and I'll try to hold them up here to the camera. Here we have on the male model here. If you remember the testicular arteries, they're going to be the same as the ovarian arteries because they go to the same structure as a fetus, and then wind up going, this would go all the way down into the testis, where this goes down to the ovaries. The ovaries are on the side. On the male, the bladder is right here on the pelvic floor. We remember we've got the kidneys and the ureters coming down to the bladder. The bladder is going to be involved with the reproductive system as well, because the urethra is shared between reproductive and urinary parts. Get this out of the way a little bit. The testis is inside the scrotum. Scrotum is the bag that holds it. Here you have the testis. Testes are multiple. This one you're seeing it from the outside. This one you're seeing it from the inside. This striped looking structure around the outside of the testis is the cremaster muscle. That's the muscle that draws the testis up or drops it down depending on temperature. The whole reason the testes are outside the body is to keep them at a lower temperature than 98.6, because sperm work best at a slightly lower temperature. So it keeps it very consistent. You drop down if you need more, need to cool, and it draws up toward the body. If you're cold, then you need to try to keep it warm. So the cremaster muscle, this bag of pink stripes, it looks like a network, and that's the cremaster muscle. Inside the testis, okay, here we have it from the outside. So we have the testis here. Here's the epididymis that leads into the vas deferens or ductus deferens, going up this way. If you take this off, inside the testis are the seminiferous tubules. The seminiferous tubules are the structures in the testis that actually produce the sperm and then deliver it to the epididymis, which is the structure that sits on top of the testis, and it stores the sperm there until it's time to deliver it up through the ductus deferens. On this model, the ductus deferens is well shown. It goes all the way up over here, all the way around behind the bladder. It passes the seminal vesicle. The seminal vesicle adds fluid to the ductus deferens here, the vas deferens. The vas deferens then dives into the prostate gland, and the vas deferens joins with the urethra. Remember, we had the prostatic urethra, the intermediate urethra, and the spongy urethra going out this way. And so here the ductus deferens is coming from the seminal vesicle, comes all the way around from the testis, comes all the way around here, joins with the urethra, and then the urethra heads out to the external urinary orifice or the urinary meatus for expulsion. We have the testicular arteries coming in, testicular veins going out. The structure of the penis, the shaft, the head or glans, G-L-A-N-S, the glans penis is the head of the penis. It is a highly sensitive tissue, very sensitive, similar structure to the clitoris on the female that's involved with stimulation during intercourse. This part of the model shows it with the prepuce or foreskin still on it. If you're born with a foreskin, which covers up the glans penis, but most people get circumcised and that removes the foreskin, partly for religious reasons and partly for cleanliness. It makes it easier to keep the penis clean. Inside, here we have, again, that we have the urethra running down the middle. You have the corpus spongiosum, is this pink structure here, spongiosum, and the corpus cavernosum is this purple part up on the top. It looks like it's full of caverns, and that is what fills with blood during an erection. It's a hydraulic process. It fills up with blood. Nitric oxide causes vasodilation, causes the corpus cavernosum to fill with blood for erection purposes. Look at my list and see if there's what I might have forgotten with the guys. Scrotum, epididymis, cremaster muscle, vas deferens, prostate, the prostate gland, testis, seminiferous tubules, testicular artery and vein, seminal vesicle, the shaft, corpus spongiosum cavernosum, glans penis covered by the prepuce unless you're circumcised, the urethra, and the external urethral meatus or opening. Also the sphincter. Remember that internal urinary sphincter on the male, internal urinary sphincter on the male is right up here, this muscular area right around where the urethra leaves the bladder, and the external urinary sphincter is right at the floor of the pelvis here after the prostate gland. All right, on the female. First of all, we start off the same way here where we're looking at the ovarian arteries and veins that are going to the ovaries that are on either side. Here's the uterus. It's sitting on top of the bladder. Remember, when you're pregnant and it pushes down on the bladder, it makes you need to pee. Remember the area, especially important on a female, that is between the urethra, oops, this has to go down, between the urethra and the vaginal and anal openings. This area of skin here is called the perineum, and the perineum is an area that is very prone to infection, needs to be kept very clean, and all that sort of thing. So it's an important structure to recognize and understand. Let's get these guys out of the way. Okay, so here we have the ovaries, and we have the fallopian tubes or uterine tubes. They're called now as much as fallopian tubes. Most people still will refer to those as fallopian tubes. The uterine tubes or fallopian tubes that are coming down toward the uterus. The ovary will expel the egg, which will, or ovum, which will float in space for as much as an hour before it gets pulled into the uterine tube by these little fingers on the end called fimbriae or fimbria, and pulled into the uterine tube and down into the uterus. Here we're seeing it from the side. Okay, so the uterus is up on top of the bladder. The rectum comes right behind it. So you have the urethral opening, you have the vaginal opening, and you have the anus, the rectum, all here right close together in this perineum, this perineal area. Take this off, and we can see the structures from the inside. So here's the rectum, and here's the bladder with the urethra. Here we have the external structures, the labia, the majora and minorum, or majoris and minoris, large and small. The term labia means lips. Our eyelid muscles are called labia something or others. The clitoris is right up here at front. This is the structure that is embryologically the same as the glans penis on the male, so it's erectile tissue. Here we have the vagina, the vagina coming down here. It's normally relatively collapsed. Normally it's relatively collapsed. The cervix is the very opening to the uterus, and then the internal opening of the uterus, once again, is collapsed unless it's filled with baby. The layers of the uterus, you have the endometrium, which is the inner layer that thickens every month and then sloughs off with menstruation. It's also the structure that can get out of control and cause endometriosis. It actually breaks free and starts growing on other tissues. You have the myometrium, where you have fibroid tumors grow. Myomas is another term for fibroid tumors that grow. They're muscular tumors that grow in this muscular layer of the uterus. And the perimetrium on the outside. Endometrium, myometrium, perimetrium. Similar, as we've had with the bladder, similar as we've had with the heart, endo, peri, epi, things like that. And here we have a close-up of the female reproductive parts. Okay, so here we have the ovaries and the ovarian ligaments. If you have ovaries removed, they have to cut loose the ovarian ligaments to remove the ovaries. Here we have the fimbria, or fimbriae, I've heard it pronounced both ways, which are the fingers that actually reach out into the space around the ovary and pull the egg into the end of the ovarian or fallopian tube. Here's the ovarian / fallopian tube. It is muscular. It also has cilia that are constantly moving to move the egg along. The fertilization happens almost exactly 24 hours after ovulation. So fertilization takes place fairly early because the egg has to divide and divide and divide and reach a certain stage of maturity before it's ready to implant in the endometrium. Here we have the endometrium, the myometrium, and the perimetrium. We have the cervix, vagina, see if there's some things I've forgotten there. Labium majus and minus, vagina, clitoris, cervix. Oh yeah, the uterus is named sort of like the stomach, where the upper part of the uterus is the fundus. You have the fundus and the body, and then the cervix at the bottom, kind of like the fundus, the body, and the pylorus on the stomach. So the fundus, the body, and the cervix are the three general areas of the uterus. Perimetrium, myometrium, endometrium, fimbriae of the fallopian tube, ovarian ligaments. The breast, the overall breast is simply called breast. Masto is the general scientific term, so a mastectomy is the removal of a breast. The areola is the dark area around the nipple. The areola is muscular and can squeeze to help push milk out of the nipple. The nipple actually is the end of all the lactiferous ducts that produce the milk inside the breast and allow the milk to come out. Underneath that, see here you have the edge of that, the areola, nipple, and the ductwork coming through the nipple. If you can see it. I don't know if you can see it on there. And here's the fatty tissue underneath it that helps provide structure and also thermoregulation. And the best example of the other structures in the breast I found in your lab manual. I'll use a different kind of a picture probably, but this is what we're talking about. The breast is attached to the rib cage. It has the fatty tissue around it, and it has these lobules. Lobules are groups of secretory cells, and those secretory cells are actually specialized sweat cells. Sweat is simply your, plasma fluids moving from your blood into somewhere. But in this case, those extra cells around there add fats and proteins to it to produce milk. And so then you have the lactiferous ducts that take the fluid, the milk, from the lobule, the lacteal lobule, takes it to the nipple for expulsion. Okay. I think that is all the structures. Remember, the structures of the renal system and the reproductive system will be on the lab test that will come up week after next. I shouldn't say week after next. It'll be the week after the scheduled lab for the reproductive system. This week after next right now, because I'm doing this on the 10th.